court law, congressional law, presidential directive, and their very own enabling documents under an act of Congress assembled, true positive law, states clearly in these very small documents that any agency under there, their manuals have to be in harmony, because the CEQ and NEPA trump any agency's internal manual. So what happens is the federality comes in with his brown or green uniform. He announces who he's at. He says, well, per our manual, we're going to do this and this. Well, remember, it's just a manual. It's an internal operating guideline for their agency. It's not law. And your local sheriffs, or whatever you have, state troopers, constables, city councilmen, etc., need to be educated. They have a stronger footing because all operations have to comply. So, for instance, if your county had a land use policy that simply said all natural resources within our county are going to be used to the fullest extent possible for the social and economic improvement of our residents. Pretty open-ended. It's an easy one. I'm giving you a freebie here that I actually have used. It allows your county, when this agency or this alphabet shows up, to say, well, you know, that plan sounds real neat. I'm glad you guys are so gung-ho about it, but it's going to curtail the health, safety, and welfare that we have an oath to preserve in our county. The sheriffs, we get them involved. They have a responsibility to protect all of us that live within the county. And if their operation is going to be curtailed because they can't drive on all these roads to do search and rescue operations, boom, shoot it down. Be as creative as the communists. Fight them back with their own book. Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Yeah, it is. No, that's Richard Mack's book. Yes, ma'am. If you're on the sheriff issue, like Connecticut would be the same thing. They actually, by popular vote, mobocracy, got rid of sheriffs in 2000. Okay? And they're all the sheriffs do, who used to be sheriffs or constables now, all they do is transport prisoners and play bailiff. Yeah, but they're not sheriffs. They're renamed. But there's a solution to that. Yes, sir. Oh yeah, like let's say you've got a county or city land use policy. Okay, you can do something as vague but as powerful as we have a duty to protect and see all renewable resources used to the fullest extent to the benefit of our residents' social and economics. It's called social economics. It's a field of study, and that covers everything. Cultural and historic uses it covers. If you've got a region that is always trapped, certain streams, that's a cultural use protected by NEPA and CEQ. Okay? And Indian land. The Indians have had great luck with it when they have a certain herbal area or a certain nut gathering area for their tribe. That's a cultural and historic use. Ranching is a cultural and historic use. Sheep grazing. So, um, so BLM, this was their statute. Here is where you'll find environmental impact statement policy. Now this is where your first report for any activity comes in the form of a notice in the Federal Register, and the leopard frog, a new one I found in Arizona and New Mexico, This is an easy one to beat, but this shows you their tactics. They want 11,000 acres, calling it critical habitat. The problem is, in their own report on page 28 of the Federal Register, the Fish and Wildlife Service admits to transplanting the leopard frog there in 2000. It's not from there. Well, now that it won't live, because it ain't from there, that's why it's not there. Now, because it won't live, they're using it as an excuse. They transplanted it to grab 11,000 acres. The Center for Biological Diversity and Defenders of Wildlife in Arizona alone have submitted 700 species to Fish and Wildlife Service to do the same thing. Spike case and loach minnow, we whipped it in December. Now there's leopard frog. So we still got 697 left to whip. But the thing is, though, is by rewriting county land use policies, we now have the Fish and Wildlife Services coming out of Washington to just meet with us. Let me tell you another neat trick. Here's another freebie. All federal activities, when they issue the draft environmental impact statement, okay, which there is a DEIS for every activity that takes place, that any agency does, okay, there is a minimum 30-day comment period up to 60. They'll typically run minimum and do it at the worst time, like holidays, and the agencies love to all do them between Thanksgiving and Christmas, okay, when they know you're busy. But there's a minimum 30 up to 60 days, and it's up to that local regional little chief, whether it's BLM or Department of Transportation or whoever, to pick. When that opens up, if you'll just simply turn in a one-paragraph statement, okay, that, help your city, go with it pre-written, get on the agenda, say you need to turn this in, here's the laws backing you, you need to submit this. They'll give you a docket, and if they're really lazy, you can even electronically submit it to the agencies, and you instantly get an email back, down to the second when you submitted it, a docket number, everything, for proof. A one-paragraph statement that we notice your current plan number XYZ to deal with XYZ, and we would like to, work with you via the medium or vehicle of coordination to discuss these plans before you go any farther. That simple. You're not threatening them, because if you do that and you're on your own out there in some little agency bureaucrat's office, you're going to get hammered with threatening a federal officer. Okay? They're going to do a federal offense against you. You get this on city or county letterhead. It's a lot easier than you think. Now, the nice thing about it is because it involves stakeholders or other entities that have an interest in the affected area. For instance, an agency will say, well, we've already done all the local polling. Well, in my county, I have 7 different Indian tribes. NEPA states they have to survey them in their native language. So you ask them, well, where's all the Navajo and Apache and Zuni and Hopi surveys? They don't have them. Another thing they have to do, write this down, is a takings assessment. When they do any action, they have to clearly have already studied with professional, third-party, peer-reviewed social economic scientists, what is the action, how is it going to affect your area? They hardly ever do it, because they're so used to just pushing people around. Without that, the plan's dead in the water. It's called a takings assessment. Another one to look at, see if they've upheld the Regulatory Flexibility Act. Now what that states is all government levels, townships, counties, whatever, have to have already been briefed in public meetings, sponsored and paid for by the agency doing the plan, of any economic impacts. They never do that. So boom, there's a third way to shoot them down. And you'd be amazed when you get one councilman or one county supervisor or one sheriff educated, if you have a sheriff, but your county commissioners and city council can be just as effective. Because what can happen is let's say forget the sheriff, and he's a minion in New York of the governor. Well, there's agencies like rural development committees and community development. You'll have local environmental entities. We have an Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. It's kind of like the EPA for the state. What happens is when your councilmen and county people and state people are educated, and this little committee gets out of line or won't put your letter on letterhead, they just freeze the budget. They have a way to push back, and we've done it. The largest water grab, and yeah, go ahead.
You have to be in the area yourself, or could I put a letterhead in for another area across the United States,
yes,
but I don't live there?
Correct. Yes, you can. And in fact, that's how the Green Mafia works. They send out bulletins to all the little cronies all over, the college kids in dorms and the washed up hippies and everybody else. And they tell them, sign this postcard that we pre-printed and put postage on it for you and mail it in. And what they do is then they go to this little pocket, the 11,000 acres for the leopard frog, and they tell the Fish and Wildlife Service, we have 500,000 people who want this done. And almost none of them couldn't even show you where it's at, because they've never been there. This is a real life story. The supervisor, which is a huge reason of a particular area in Utah, the U.S. Forest Service, her name was Lane Zeroff. When she was there, the Greenies had got one of their mailings mixed up. And she got over 250,000 postcards for a humpback whale migration off the coast of Oregon. And Oregon Forest Service chief got all the postcards for four-wheel drive trails in Utah. And that's how they work. So you're allowed to comment because it's in your country.
Technically, from what I gather, this is more powerful than our government.
Well, it's
and
it's
one
meant to be.
individual can start something, and he can literally destroy, like this through Mexico, up through Texas, this
Trans-Texas corridor.
Texas corridor.
Yep.
You can literally destroy anything and everything that somebody starts. And
if
literally put your, this is more powerful than taxation and Obama's health program.
And it can be more powerful for you.
If you did this right,
yeah,
you could bring the country right to its knees.
Yep. The bad side could, which they're doing right now, or the good side can start using their power and their abilities and fighting back and stopping the next Trans-Texas corridor that it'll be at somewhere else.
I mean, anything.
Well, that's just it, though. All you're doing is enforcing a constitutional republic.
Right.
You're telling them, look, you stepped outside of your bounds. You don't have jurisdiction here. We didn't cede this part of the state to you. It's not a fort, dock, arsenal, military base, or magazine. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Okay, and if they don't have jurisdiction and delegation of authority, they have no power there. So all you're doing is saying, get back in your cage, which is the American Samoas, Puerto Rico, Guam, 10 square miles in Washington, D.C., and those small bases and forts, docks, arsenals, and magazines that we've ceded to them.
This would be a way to stop the immigration from coming across the Mexican border.
And that's where it's going, because they've actually used the environmental trump card is what they're using now. The EPA has went in last week and ran out for the Department of the Interior. I told you, they're one of the most powerful departments in Washington, because everything is under them that is our day-to-day life. I mean,
right.
The Department of the Interior pulled out all the Border Patrol off our border. See, we're becoming under a huge attack from the White House because you've seen and I'm proud of our Governor Brewer and all our activities, and she's pushing right back. So what he did was he sent the EPA in there, and they pulled out all the border guards last week, saying that the border guards patrolling are hurting things like the black Mexican jaguar because we're interrupting their migration. And Regulatory Flexibility Act. Now, here I want you 43 CFR again, 1610.3. 43